Go.
Okay, you ask a question now.
What's your name?
My name's Rod Johnson. I'm an attorney specializing in family law, business law. I do divorces, child custody, juvenile law, children that are in trouble with the courts, juvenile delinquents, also child abuse and neglect.
Hold on 1 second.
What do you love about being a lawyer?
Helping people find peace. When I was in law school, I had an ethics professor, and he asked all of the students, it was a huge stadium, you know, you got a big stadium full of law students, maybe 200-300 students in there. And this was probably our first or second semester of law school. And he asked us, give me a one-word description of a lawyer. And of course everybody has to make jokes for the first 15 minutes, you know, tell their best lawyer joke. But eventually it calmed down and people were saying like counselor. He said, no, that's hackneyed, that doesn't really describe. And he went to kind of deconstruct every word somebody gave him and said, that's really not, this is why that is not an adequate answer for what a lawyer does. And so half hour later, okay, half hour later into the class, he's still on the same question. And this is before we get to any questions about ethics and law or any cases. And nobody got it. And finally he gave us the word, peacemaker. And then he told us about William the Conqueror, back in the old English days, and back in the old English days when people were agrarian and it was, you know, you had a feudal culture. The bottom line was, if you steal my chicken, I steal your pig. You steal my pig, I kill your wife. Okay, back then is where the lawyering, our culture of lawyering in Western society emerged. And then lawyers, their job was to be peacemakers, was to keep people from ripping each other apart. And when I can do that, I feel like I've done a good job for my clients.
Great. What do you like to do for fun?
Mostly spend time with family. I spend a lot of time reading, studying. Tend to have a lot of strong mixture between work and play. I read somewhere, I think it was James Michener said that the perfect life or the good life is when there's no distinction between work and play. So I spend a lot of time studying. When I'm not doing that, I spend time with family. My daughter, we go out to eat a lot. In fact, we're standing in front of one of Detroit's landmarks, Fishbones, and that's all I like to do for fun.
Okay. Now I've noticed that you mentioned you're studying, and I see that you studied Japanese from time to time. Can you give us some background on that?
I attended the University of Maryland's Asian Division, where I studied Japanese. But for the most part, I'm self-taught. Even though I did attend the university there, I was pretty much self-taught in the language aspect. And the university really helped me more with the cultural parts of Asian culture.
What are you most passionate about?
You already asked me. Ask and answer.
You messed up on it.
I object to the question, ask and answer.
Come on. What do you give? What type of advice would you give someone getting divorced?
In particular, if there are children involved, the most important advice I can have is always keep the children first. More often than not in a divorce, the parents are at war and the children become the bullets. And that's probably the worst thing that could ever happen in a divorce, because it doesn't just hurt the children, but it ultimately results in the parties ripping each other apart in a way that they would not have ordinarily have done. But because it is such a deep and passionate and important issue in terms of where the children are going to live, who's going to make decisions for them. So if a divorce is on the horizon and children are in the picture, the children have to come first. And if that's done, I find that the divorces are more often than not amicable, conciliatory, and a lot less destructive on the parties.
Speaking of the children and the divorce or and other factors, what are your thoughts on the Michael Jackson custody battle?
Well, as I understand it, Mr. Jackson had a will wherein he designated his mother to be the primary custodian. I think he had Diana Ross as a secondary in the event his mother was not able to care for the children. However, while that might be a presumption in favor of the grandmother, it is not going to be determinative in that custody arrangements and custody decisions are always decided by a court. The grandmother's going to have to file a petition for custody. Other folks who may have an interest in the children will have to file petitions for custody. And in every state in the union, as I understand it, the issue is going to turn on the best interest of the children, not necessarily on what Mr. Jackson's wishes were relative to who should be the parent of the children.
Okay, what is the most bizarre thing that you have ever happened to you while you were in a courtroom?
Well, unfortunately, unlike television, there aren't a whole lot of bizarre things that happen in the courtroom. Most of the bizarre things that occur are only interesting to lawyers. Lawyers can sit and argue for days about whether or not where a comma is placed in a sentence and what the impact that is for the party's lawsuit. So bizarre things are sometimes when judges wander off the reservation, decide to not follow the law. Sometimes that's good because ultimately justice is served for a particular defendant or plaintiff, but it does not provide for predictability, which is what lawyers want, which is what the law is all about, is predictability. So unfortunately, I don't have any real flamboyant horror stories about the court. They're typically just people straying away from procedure.
Okay, and how often are you approached for people who are looking for your legal services?
I probably get 4 or 5 calls a day. I may get 4 or 5 email inquiries a day. For the